Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's another week. It's FPC Radio Live, March 27th, 2023. And I was going to say, Boston Bruins are pretty incredible. We don't usually start right off the bat with hockey, although I love the sport, so I should probably do it more, in general. But 57 wins ties a franchise record set by the 1970-71 Bruins, a team we often speak about as perhaps the best Boston Bruins team. Unfortunately, or ironically, coincidentally, whatever the hell adjective or whatever you want to describe it as, they didn't win the Stanley Cup that year. Hopefully the Bruins do not follow suit. So, look, John, 7 in a row now. David Pastrnak gets his 50th yesterday. And what was a game of absences, because the Bruins didn't have Patrice Bergeron. They didn't have Brad Marchand. They didn't have Hampus Lindholm. Now, Jeremy Swayman started in net instead of Linus Ullmark. It's obviously a quote-unquote downgrade because Linus Ullmark is, well, fantastic. But, for all intents and purposes, Jeremy Swayman is good to start on just about any NHL team in this league right now. So, and they go up against the second-best team in the standings in the East, a team that, well, again, they're 15 points ahead of, but they're again, there are a lot of points ahead of a lot of teams. Got a little dicey there in the third, but shootout, they came through, no doubt about it. Scored on their first two opportunities. Jeremy Swayman shut the door, and John, this Boston Bruins team with 9 games left is 5 away from tying the most wins in NHL history and 6 away from breaking the record.
Pretty incredible. I mean, they were on yet another winning streak, this time 7 straight wins, 57 wins on the season, only 11 losses and 5 ties. Just been incredible. Like every time you think they're going to slip up a little bit, they just go out and win back-to-back games over the weekend against 2 teams that they're probably going to have to beat in the postseason, right? Mm-hmm. Tampa at home 2-1, and then they go on the road and beat Carolina.
At least one of those teams they're likely going to have to run into, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we expect them to win the first round series against the Islanders or Pittsburgh, and then they're going to play either Tampa or Toronto. And if you beat them, Carolina may be facing you in the conference finals. Although with hockey, we know that the Rangers or the Devils could certainly beat Carolina in a series. Heck, Carolina could lose in the first round of the playoffs too.
The Devils and Hurricanes are pretty. I mean, I think the Hurricanes are a little bit better. A little bit more battle tested too, I guess you want to call it, because they have had some recent playoff experience. But the Devils are right there. I mean, they could obviously make a run. Look, it doesn't really matter at this point, if you're thinking about it. Like, I mean, this Bruins team is just going to go out and beat whoever is in front of them. And it doesn't matter. Like, they rested these guys on back-to-backs, which look, I do not disagree with at this point. And look, they still picked up the win. And yeah, did they miss Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, and Hampus Lindholm yesterday? Absolutely. But they still competed with what a lot of people consider is the second best team, not just in the East, but in the league. And, you can't imagine a scenario, or at least I can't. I haven't been able to do it all season, where a team will come in and beat them 4 out of 7 games. Because they haven't done that. They haven't lost like that all season. They lost 2 in a row a couple weeks ago. And this is what they've done a few times, John. They lose 2 in a row. And if you remember a couple months ago, they go 1-3-1 at one point. Well, following that 1-3-1 stretch, they won 10 games in a row. They lost, and then they won a couple more games in a row. So it was like 13 out of 14 games they won. And then, John, they lose back-to-back games a couple weeks ago. What had they done? Well, they just won 7 in a row. No big deal. Against some really good teams, too. So this isn't just beating up on lesser teams. Well, look, they've been beating up on lesser teams the entire season, because every team in the league is a lesser team right now. And it's just, like I said, it's pretty incredible. They're getting great goaltending, great depth effort from across the board. Oscar Steen plays his first game in NHL game in 13 months, and he's out there making noise. You have got, every trade acquisition they made. Dmitry Orlov looks like Thomas, the expectation of what Thomas Cabriolet was supposed to bring to the Bruins. Remember that long, awful pursuit of Thomas Cabriolet, and he shows up and literally does nothing? Like, nothing positive or negative, John. It was like he didn't exist. It kind of became a joke, and it was funny because at the end of the day, they won the Stanley Cup, but it was so underwhelming based on what we expected with the pursuit of Thomas Cabriolet, this puck-moving defenseman. Well, I saw Dmitry Orlov skate wonderfully in between all these different players yesterday, and this is something that he creates. He's been a presence since he's arrived. Garnet Hathaway's been a presence since he arrived. Tyler Bertuzzi's been a presence since he has arrived. So it's been just an absolute pleasure being able to watch this team. And with 9 games left, they would have to have their worst stretch of the season just to tie the wins record. That's what we're looking at right now. They would have to go 5-4, which they haven't even come close to doing all season, to only tie the record. So pretty impressive.
The thing you look forward to as well is how they finish. You want to finish strong. I know the record may not mean much to many fans or players or whoever, but I did a little research because occasionally I do that, especially with hockey. I got to do research on hockey because I don't follow the sport like you do. But I look back at the 2018-2019 Lightning, who went 62-16-4, had 128 points, and got swept in the first round by Columbus. They got outscored in that series 19-7. I mean, they were just absolutely destroyed by the Blue Jackets. But they didn't finish that strong. In their final 11 games, they lost 4. So they went 7-4 down the stretch, which for most teams is pretty good. But for a team that had dominated all year long, that's not that great. So I think it's kind of important to finish strong, get into the postseason with some sort of momentum, and then take care of business in that first round. The teams that they might play in the first round, the Islanders and Pittsburgh come to mind, right? I think they would obviously beat either one of those teams. Would the Islanders make you sweat more, though, because of their style of play?
I mean, not really. I look because like in the past, yeah, I mean, different styles of play, but this Bruins team is the only thing they don't do well is the power play. I mean, I'm serious. It's the most baffling thing in the world. It's like there was at one point they went on the power play and immediately got called for a penalty, so it evened it up at 4-on-4, and obviously Jack Edwards and Andy Brickley were complaining, but I'm sitting there thinking I'm like, thank God, rather than play 4-on-4 than 5-on-4 at this point. Right. No, look, I mean, all kidding aside, their power play has looked a little bit better the last few weeks, and the reality of it is yeah, it's nice to have that going, but when you're as good as the Bruins are at pretty much every other thing, and that's just not one style of hockey. It's not a fast-paced game. They can slow it down, grind it out like they did yesterday. They can go fast-paced. They can score. They can beat you with speed. They can beat you with grit. So it's I'm not really like I said. I mean, I'm not really concerned necessarily outside of, well, look, it's hockey and anything can happen. And excuse me, going back to that. You're talking about the Lightning, and as good as the Lightning were phenomenal that season. I believe they finished the year at plus 103, and the gap between them and the next group of teams was big, but the Bruins are at plus 19, plus 116 right now, I believe. Mm-hmm. The Carolina Hurricanes are the next closest team at plus 53. So, not only have they, and they will, like I said before, they're likely going to finish in the mid 120s range, based on, what I anticipate will be their final record and what's ahead left in the season. They're going to finish nearly plus 75 points higher than the next team. So, were the Lightning incredibly good in 2018, 2019? Absolutely. I don't think a gap was as big as it is right now between the Bruins and the next closest team, because right now they're dominating with goaltending, they're dominating with offense, they're dominating with defense, and it really has not stopped since the first drop of the puck back in October.
No, it really hasn't, right? They started the season 11-1, and they just haven't let up. I mean, they just continually put together these stretches of, like you said, a 10-game winning streak, a 7-game winning streak. When they have a little bump in the road, they come back with those types of streaks. The only thing I would question, and again, this is because it's hockey and you're the goalie, the two goalies they have been superb this year, right? Ullmark and Swayman.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a track record of being that great in the postseason because, quite frankly, they don't have really that big of a track record in the postseason, right? It was pretty much last year, and if I recall, Ullmark started the first 2 games, and then they went to Swayman for the next 5 games. So it's not like where Tampa can go to their goaltender and won a couple of cups, right? Vasilevsky, who's still considered maybe the best goalie in the world. Ullmark's having the best season of any goalie, but that's the only thing that would give me a little pause. And again, I'm just, looking at it more macro than micro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, I mean, sure. I mean, that's certainly a possibility that, so much as it is a team sport, obviously there's so much that it's just like football or well, we'll stick to football. Like, it's just like football where it's like, yeah, there's so much about it being a team sport, but there's still so much weight that goes on one single player, and that's the quarterback. In this situation, it's a goalie, because no matter what you do, if your goalie is A, either unstoppable, or B, not playing that well, that kind of greatly alters your chances one way or the other. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. But again, there's no reason to doubt other than just the fear of uncertainty, and that's kind of what I think it is. I'm not saying you're afraid of uncertainty. I'm just saying the normal, just we've never seen it before. We've never seen it in the playoffs before. Look, I think this is more than a coincidence that Linus Ullmark is playing the way he has. I think there was a lot of good things to look at his time in Buffalo, but the problem was he was in Buffalo, so the numbers aren't going to look great. But you could see it when you watched him play. He was, and they talked about it a lot on the broadcast. Well, I had to, since I live down here in the Tampa Bay area, I had to watch the Lightning broadcast the other day. But they were talking about Linus Ullmark and his positioning and how good he is at staying square and always being in the right spot. And you could see that with Buffalo. It's just, again, it doesn't translate to great numbers per se. And now that he's on a team, yes, that is very good defensively, but he won that game in Tampa Bay with some of the, or against Tampa Bay with some of the saves he had late. Likewise, Jeremy Swayman in the final seconds of yesterday's game kept that game from being a 4-3 regulation loss, and ultimately the Bruins won in the shootout. So, side note, shootout sucks. It should still go away. Needed to say that. Anyways, I have to. I mean, I hate the shootout. Even though the Bruins won, it's still kind of, I would have much rather they finished it off in overtime, but that's just me. So anyways, like I look at Linus Ullmark, and is it surprising that he's playing as well as he has? And he very well may get to 40 wins, which would be something only accomplished by one other Bruins goaltender, or a guy named Tiny Thompson, John. I don't even think you were around for him. I think he was a little bit before your time.
No, I'm old. The first goalie I recall was Jerry Cheevers, and he was backed up favorably by Eddie Johnson.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is looking at Linus Ullmark's career numbers. They're darn good even before he got here. Going backwards, his save percentage this year, 937, last year, 917, 917, 915, 905, 935, 917, 913, career save percentage, 912. Those are pretty good numbers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not Martin Brodeur or Patrick Roy. I get that, but those are pretty good numbers.
Well, like I said, considering they're decent numbers considering where he played a majority of that time in for a team that was just the bottom of the barrel, So, yeah, of course you're going to, goaltenders going to be better generally when they have better teams in front of them. But, this is just I think a combination of A, obviously having a better team in front of them, and B, just finding his game. I mean, he's still a relatively young guy. I mean, this isn't, a journeyman, back in the day when Tim Thomas had his, stretch of some really good seasons, later in his career, kind of found his groove, he remembers like yoga phase or whatever. So, maybe you can attribute it to that. Either way, kind of late in his career, had a nice little run. This is something where the Bruins, you can look back at this in a couple seasons and say, that was one of the biggest offseason acquisitions, certainly of the last handful of years. I mean, you go from a guy who, his flaws obviously were that he never actually won the cup, but a pretty damn good Bruins goalie in Tuukka Rask, and you sign a relatively unknown and not it was surprising, yes. I don't want to say it was shocking because I think if you thought about it, you're like, okay, maybe Tuukka's not ready to play, blah blah blah, all this stuff. But a relatively surprising move by the Bruins, and all of a sudden you're looking at it like, wow, he's going to win the Vezina Trophy. Him and Jeremy Swayman, they're going to win the Jennings Trophy for the team that allows the fewest goals throughout the season, the tandem or triple, whatever group of goalies you use. And by far, I mean, this isn't a fluke. I mean, he's number one in save percentage, number one in goals against average, number one in wins. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no reason to believe that can't carry over into the playoffs because you have a lot of veterans on this team, and this was kind of the thing that I was trying to differentiate between the two previous teams that won 62 games in the Lightning and Detroit Red Wings from 95-96. Both teams, neither of which won the cup, but both teams went on to win back-to-back Stanley Cups immediately after. So the difference, though, and there's some discrepancy with the Lightning because they were in a Stanley Cup final in 2015, but both of those teams hadn't really tasted that deep playoff experience yet, and won. The Bruins have been to the Stanley Cup final twice since they won in 2011. So obviously the win was, 12 years ago now. But, it was just, look, if they go back to the Stanley Cup final, it's only been them and the Lightning the last 5 years that have represented the East. So it wasn't that long ago that a good group of this team was in the finals. And I think they're obviously better now. Obviously, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a Bruins team better than this if they finish it off. But this team, I think, is more equipped to deal with that playoff mentality. And I wouldn't expect them to get surprised by any team. And even in that season, the Blue Jackets gave the Lightning trouble in the regular season. This wasn't a team they dominated and then just out of nowhere just got steamrolled. No, this was, something that maybe you couldn't see coming necessarily, but something that, in hindsight, maybe wasn't as surprising. The sweep was, but Columbus winning the series probably wasn't as crazy of an idea as it seemed at the time. But in this situation, I don't see that team that we thought maybe Carolina is that team, but look, at full strength, at full health, and that's something the Bruins will be at, and the Carolina Hurricanes will not. At full health, this Bruins team shouldn't have a problem with the Hurricanes. They're more physical than them, which is something that I wouldn't have said the last couple years. And they're better offensively. They play a better overall game in every zone. So you look at New Jersey, who again, a very good team in New Jersey. I don't know if they have what it takes to stack up to the Bruins. Likewise for any of those bottom of the playoff pool teams, so the Islanders, Pittsburgh. So the reality of it is this Bruins team. This is their Stanley Cup to win. I mean, it really is. This postseason is about the Boston Bruins and whether or not that they can get the job done. You talk about being a great closer. This is the great time to be a great closer right now in these next couple months. Close it out, and you're talking about again one of the best teams in NHL history if they can win a Stanley Cup. If not, just a nice little footnote in Bruins history that they won X amount of games and they did all this, but unfortunately, it didn't end in a Stanley Cup. So,
you don't want to be part two of the 1970-71 Bruins, which again had that fabulous record, but lost in the first round to Montreal. Won the cup the year before, won the cup after. You don't want to be compared to the 07 Patriots, who just came so close. But I think this team is set up for that, and I think one of the big reasons, Ian, and we've talked about it quite a bit, is their versatility. They can win a shootout. They could not a literal shootout, but they can win, a 6-5 game, a 2-1 game, a physical game. the teams that have bounced them recently from the postseason, right? St. Louis, the Islanders, Carolina, they played hard. They played sandpaper style. This Bruins team's much better equipped to deal with that now, especially with what they added at the trade deadline.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's the big thing. That's where you're not concerned about kind of the demons of the past. Is that, like I said before, I mean they're just a more physical team than Carolina, and that's saying something because again, I mean Carolina is a very physical, borderline. If you want to call it dirty, I mean sure, go for it. I mean that's hockey. That's the grit style of game that Carolina plays, and the Bruins haven't been able to match that in a while, and that was one of the keys of them winning a cup back in 2011. Now, again, the game's changed a little bit, but there's still a need for that tenacity and that grit and that bit of on the edge play. And I think the Bruins match up against any team in the league when it comes to that. So, excuse me, sorry about that. I'm just getting over being sick, so you have to bear with me.
Tom Yum soup. That's my suggestion.
Yeah.
Find a good Thai restaurant, get some Tom Yum soup. That'll solve all your problems.
Yeah, well, I might have to do that. I do love Thai food. So, are you concerned, John, at all with all this talk? I mean, you heard Alan Lazard, New Jets wide receiver, by the way. You heard Alan Lazard recently say that the reason he signed with the Jets was because he anticipates Aaron Rodgers being here. Obviously, we've already heard Aaron Rodgers say he expects or he wants to play for the Jets. Are you at all concerned that this is going to continue to complicate a deal that I think we were all 99.9% sure was going to happen? And maybe those percentages are shrinking, albeit very small. But are you concerned at all? Does this keep you up at night? I mean, aside from all the other issues going on, but, does this keep you up at night the most?
No, I think it's going to get done. Maybe get done closer to the draft. Maybe get done on draft night. I know the Jets don't want to part with the 13th overall pick. The Packers want that, so there's going to have to be some negotiation. I still think a second-round pick this year and a conditional second-round pick next year should get it done. I mean, because as much as Green Bay thinks they have the hammer over the Jets, there's really not a big market out there for Aaron Rodgers at this point when you consider he's going to be paid nearly $60 million this season. So where do you go? And do they want him walking into training camp? Because if I'm Aaron Rodgers and they don't trade me, I show up to training camp. Hey, I'm ready to play. If you want to have a quarterback, competition with me and Jordan Love, I'm ready to play. And that would be a sideshow. So they have to move him. And I think the negotiations will take place. I still maintain that the commissioner could get involved because this is one of the biggest stars in the league. You can't have him dangling out there when he wants to play. And again, schedules have to be made. And I guess you can flex out of certain games. I get that. But with Aaron Rodgers, the Jets will be on a lot of primetime games. Without him, they'll be on fewer. So that's part of the equation because it is about TV. That's what drives this sport. So I think it still gets done. But, I don't think he helped himself 2 weeks ago going on the Pat McAfee show and airing his grievances. Just at that point, just say, yeah, I'm interested in coming back and end it there. But, he sometimes is his own worst enemy. So that didn't help. But it's got to get done, I would think. I mean, if it didn't, it would be quite disappointing.
Oh, sure. Sure. I mean, look, at this point, I don't like the idea that he's going to the Jets, obviously, because I'm a Patriots fan. And, I think it's certainly going to make the Jets better. But I do want to see him play for another team. And we've talked about his legacy, all that stuff to quite a large extent. But so I kind of want to see how that plays out. I want to see him in a different jersey, just, for all the, just the visual aspect of it. But yeah, look, I think this is ultimately going to get done. If you're the Jets, you're probably sitting there thinking like, please just shut the hell up, everyone. Just let us figure this out. Like, I mean, honestly, you're only complicating things. You're not making them better. Maybe you're not necessarily making them worse, but you're certainly not making them better. And excuse me, if they can just resolve, like the earlier they resolve this, the better. Because if you're the Jets, mostly, you just want to get this done so you can shift towards the season, knowing that Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback and knowing that he's going to be at mini camp, or you can draft accordingly, or you can draft knowing that you want to know this. For the Packers, it doesn't really matter. They've moved on either way. So, for them, it's just, kind of a accounting headache, dealing with Aaron Rodgers still being on the roster. For the Jets, it's a planning and game planning problem. So, yeah, I do think that the Jets are very eager to get this done, but current and soon to be current New York Jets need to keep their mouth shut a little bit.
Oh, without question. Just go radio silence or Pat McAfee silence.
Yeah.
Get this thing done. What complicates things is that the Packers don't have an owner. Oftentimes when these things happen, the two owners get on the phone and they hammer it out, right? We saw this with Robert Kraft dealing with the Jets, with Parcells, and later with Bill Belichick. You can kind of get these things resolved at an ownership level. You try to stay out of it if you're an owner, but they're still the ultimate bosses, right? They're the guys that sign all those checks. So, if you had Woody Johnson could get on with who, though? Is it Mark Murphy? And Mark Murphy's, president of the Green Bay Packers, but he's not the owner. He's beholden to a board of trustees. So it's kind of weird in that sense. But again, Roger Goodell's busy signing a contract that's going to pay him $64 million a year. So, maybe this isn't all that important to him. But at some point, the league has to step in and get this thing resolved because, look, what's better for the league than having Aaron Rodgers playing with the Jets and them being somewhat relevant? And we all want to see the Bill Belichick versus Aaron Rodgers twice a year when leading up to those two games, they will just talk glowingly about each other. I mean, they have a literal love affair with each other. I mean, Belichick talking about Rodgers and Rodgers talking about Belichick is awesome. But yeah, this has to get resolved hopefully before the draft because I think that's what they're fighting over is draft picks. So I would expect when it's not expected for this to drop, like at some point, some Thursday afternoon, we'll get a news flash at whatever time the deal is consummated. Rodgers is a Jet and is what the Jets are sending back to the Packers for compensation.
All right, let's play make-believe here for the last couple minutes that we're on the air. He does go to the Jets. This gets done. The trade gets finalized. He's number 12 maybe with the New York Jets. Joe Namath wants it to happen. Mm-hmm. Where are they in the AFC East? Second best team? Are they better than Buffalo?
I think they will be better than Buffalo. I put out these power rankings and I had them fourth in the conference, right behind Buffalo. I just have this funny feeling Buffalo's going to, I wouldn't say implode this year, but take a step back.
Yeah.
Like last year was their year to win everything, and they didn't. Their defense wasn't as good as it's been in years past. Josh Allen regressed. They have no running game. Sean McDermott, I think, kind of wears on people. So I could see them regressing a little bit. And the Jets have a better defense than Buffalo, and now they'll have a quarterback that can go mano a mano against the Bills quarterback. And let's not forget the Jets beat Buffalo last year and played them pretty competitively up in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the Jets were really frightened of the Buffalo Bills. Now you give them an elite quarterback, I think they're that much better. I think it would be a three-team race. I think the Patriots are clearly fourth. We'll see what they do in the draft. If they can maybe add a corner and a left tackle, maybe we have a wide-open four-team race in the AFC East. But I could see the Jets going 12-5, winning that division if Buffalo's 11-6. Because Buffalo, again, the second half of the year, just a lot of clunky wins.
Yeah.
Like odd wins. The win at Detroit, the win against, Miami in the playoffs was ugly. And then they went up against the real team against Cincinnati, and they were manhandled by the Bengals. So I could see the Jets winning the division without question.
Well, and look, I mean, to be honest, I still think Aaron Rodgers is it's still a better quarterback than Josh Allen. Like, look, if you want to put Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow above Aaron Rodgers, that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna, make too much of a fuss about it, but
you will during the season when our guy is playing really well.
Well, that's
you hate the Jets. He's our guy.
He's our guy now. Okay, then it's quite a shift. I gotta prepare myself for next season. Apparently, I gotta get on the Aaron Rodgers stan bandwagon. But no, but
your Jets shirt number 12.
No, God no. Look, as much as I love Tom Brady, I refuse to buy a Bucks Brady jersey. I mean, I'll do it now that he's retired and I can hang it up or whatever. But like, as he was playing, I couldn't do it. But yeah, I mean, like, look, I mean, he's still like, you're not going to convince me right now that Josh Allen, like, the momentum Josh Allen had going into last season and kind of like what we saw to start made you think, okay, maybe he was, but there's nothing to suggest that he's surpassed Aaron Rodgers. Like, look, I think Josh Allen's greatest advantage is his physical abilities, and it's not a bad thing. But give me the guy whose advantage is mental and knowledge and that ability. So in that sense, I'll take Aaron Rodgers every day over Josh Allen. Guys like Mahomes and Burrow, I think we both agree they have a little something extra, and obviously Mahomes it's coming off a Super Bowl win and MVP, all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to get done. Maybe going into the season, at least at this second, maybe I'll give Buffalo the benefit of the doubt in terms of being the top team in the AFC East. But when all's said and done, I mean, the Jets would have the best quarterback, and I think, like you said, I mean, their defense, you can argue, is even better than Buffalo's right now going into this season. So there's a lot of check marks in their favor. So it wouldn't be surprising if they overtook them early on in the season. But then again, like you said, there's a long way to go. Like, this is not, we don't think this is the final version of what the Patriots are going to be. And if Mac Jones plays up to his ability, it can make things really interesting in a division that, we haven't even mentioned the Dolphins, who, again, at one point last year looked like the best team in the AFC East. So very interesting stuff. I like it. That's why I like football, John. Keeps things interesting.
It is very interesting. You could have a 9, a 10, an 11, and a 12 win team in the AFC next year.
Sure.
That's how strong that division is.
Yeah, I can see that. So, all right, that's going to do it for us here today. We will be back tomorrow, the 28th of March. That generally falls the 27th. So, unless things have changed overnight, I guess tomorrow will be the 28th, and we'll be back. We'll talk more. Maybe Aaron Rodgers gets traded, right after we get off the air here. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe there's more sound bites that we're going to get to talk about. Either way, what I can tell you is, well, actually, they don't play today, but I was going to say the Bruins were going to win, but they'll win on Wednesday when we're off the air. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.